Hello and welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, good morning to you.
Good morning, Andrew. How are you this Monday morning?
I'm okay. It feels like we're sort of back into the normality, real life again, you know? It's sort of, I know Christmas, New Year has all been gone a while now, but sort of the Monday after New Year's Day is when things sort of start to get back to normal again. So I'm hoping things get back to normal in all kinds of ways.
Yes. Yeah. It is when reality really sinks in. But, you know, we had a little Christmas flourish at the weekend. We had some snow.
Oh, we didn't. Thankfully, it was very cold, and some parts of the country got a bit of snow, but we did not here in Dublin, which I'm very happy for, to be honest.
It was bad snow. It was like there was snow, and it happened at night, mainly while everyone was asleep.
Right.
And by morning, it was just like slush, you know?
Slush is the worst.
It is actually the worst.
Yeah.
I did this thing where, I don't know if you've ever done this, but basically there was like slush on the outside of my car window. And I was like, I know, I'll wind the window down to get rid of the slush. And what I did was just let the slush into the car.
Never let the slush in. That's the golden rule of slush.
It lives in there now.
Yeah.
It's seeped into all the carpets and everything, and you'll never get it out.
It's like,
that's nice.
Yeah, it's like that horror movie from years ago. Was it called The Blob? Just
the
ooze.
slush.
Yeah, the slush now lives in your car.
And it's London slush, so it's obviously heavily polluted.
Yes, brown and gross. Yeah,
exactly. It's slowly going to sort of turn me into a supervillain.
Okay.
If the PGMOL don't do that already.
Oh my God, they've driven you to a point I thought we'd never get to.
Mildly cross.
But actually, you know, I'm going to play this, right? Because someone asked us a question. Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but, you know, you brought it up, so we're here. Bumpy Lanes on Blue Sky, bumpylanes.bsky.social, says, Gunnerblog commented unusually in his On the Whistle that he thought Anthony Taylor was out to get us. And I went, and I watched your video, and I didn't catch that. But I went back, and I had a listen.
I do think this referee was out to get us a bit. A bit. Not completely, just a bit. Wow, so, well, they've driven me to distraction there.
Yeah, because I know you don't.
That's a man on the edge.
For sure.
We can hear him right there.
For sure, because I know you don't like talking about referees and refereeing decisions that much, but there was a very big refereeing decision in this game, which I suppose we should come to in time. Should we do the other stuff first? Should we sort of work our way to the point where you were driven to mild distraction?
All right, I can build myself up.
Yeah. Let me get you wound up before we get there. How about that?
Okay, yeah, let's rattle through the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Okay, so starting lineup.
Obviously, no Kai Havertz, not well enough to start. No Gabriel Martinelli in the starting lineup. No Martin Odegaard in the starting lineup. No Jurrien Timber in the starting lineup because of his suspension, obviously. And Ethan Nwaneri remained in the starting lineup, which turned out to be a good thing, maybe a bad thing as well. A mixed blessing, perhaps, based on what transpired. There was good and bad to his evening. It looked... Jorginho was in, by the way, into midfield alongside Declan Rice and Mikel Merino. So it was a strange sort of a lineup. It's not one that if you had everybody available, you would ever see start a game, I don't think.
No. It reminded me a little bit of the Bournemouth game away from home, in that it was a midfield that I think was, potentially lacking in some creativity. Similarly to that game, there was no Bukayo Saka, obviously. Pleased to see Nwaneri get another game. I was intrigued about seeing Declan Rice kind of on the right side of the midfield. He's done it for England quite a few times, and he's such a flexible player. I sort of was curious to see how he might get on, but I was also a bit worried about that midfield maybe looking a bit more, what's the word?
Functional.
Stodgy.
Yeah, functional rather than creative. I think there was definitely something missing in terms of the creativity from that starting three. Although I do think Jorginho looks to play some nice passes from deeper positions.
Well, he played that nice one for Jesus, didn't he? But it was just offside.
Yeah, he did. That was about 10 minutes in. And you could see actually at times, I think he had a word with Nwaneri once or twice to sort of look for that move off the left back's shoulder, so he could try and find that pass for him. It didn't always work. But look, Jorginho, Rice and Merino is not the most creative midfield you could ever put out. I know options were very, very limited. I'm not sure there was much else he could really do. Without Odegaard, who was sick and struggled even when he came on. Maybe we'll come to that. So yeah, it was a bit. I think we had to sort of grind our way through this game.
Yeah, it's a depleted 11.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no two ways about that. You've got a guy in the front three starting his second Premier League game. You've got big absentees in midfield. You're missing probably your primary centre forward. Star man in Bukayo Saka. You haven't got a right back. I mean, there's a lot of issues.
Sure.
That I think you have to factor in when assessing the performance.
Plus the fact that we had played, and this is, just trying to, again, look for reasons rather than make excuses. We had played on Wednesday. Brighton played on Monday. They had a couple of days extra rest. We had a hard away game against Brentford. They're at home. We are very, very depleted. So, I can understand why perhaps aspects of the performance were not quite to the level that we would have liked.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, I think, it's a difficult run of away games, particularly the sort of unfortunate coincidence of it coming at a time where there's a bug in the squad. I mean, I don't know if you watched Mikel Arteta's press conference on before this game, but he seems under the weather, I think we could say as well. So it's far from ideal. I would say that when Arsenal got their festive fixture list, I don't think they had too many complaints because they obviously had the bigger layoff before the Ipswich game, right, that other teams didn't have. And I think they were quite pleased about that. They got Christmas with their families and all those sorts of things. But I think if you look at this week in isolation, Brentford then Brighton in 3 days, that is tough.
Yeah, Christmas with the families is probably why everyone's sick.
Yeah, exactly. They should have just kept them locked in the hotel.
Exactly. Leave them there.
As doubtless Mikel would have liked to do.
Christmas on Zoom. That's the way to do it from now on. Keep the family together, but digitally.
At bay.
Yeah, exactly. So look, for all the talk, though, of the lack of creativity in midfield, I thought it was really nice play between Merino and Rice, which led to the Ethan Nwaneri goal. I'm not 100% sure that the Merino pass is for Nwaneri. I think I'm
about 80% sure it's not, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's a sort of give and go with Rice, who actually, to be fair, does make the move, but Nwaneri is in a lot of space, picks up the ball, drives into the box. I don't think it's the most convincing finish he will ever produce in his life, but I think what we know about him from our limited experience of him as a player is that if you give him a side of goal, he absolutely backs himself to score. He will take shots. He will take the risk, take the responsibility, whatever way you want to call it. Like, it's one of those where he had to score, because if he didn't, I think Declan Rice would have had a few words. Who was, he was steaming alongside him. I think it would have been a tap in if Nwaneri had played the right pass straight to Rice, but he took it on himself, scored 1-0, and what a nice moment for him.
Yeah. As soon as I think he saw the goal in front of him, his eyes just lit up, didn't they? And he started driving. I don't think many 17-year-olds have the confidence to take that chance on. I can envision many teenagers, looking up and looking for the sideways pass to try and play someone else in. Nwaneri, I put a W into the not by mistake. Yep. Yeah. Really good stuff. And nice interplay. Interesting to see Rice and Merino sort of both end up on that side of the pitch at that point in time, showing a bit more flexibility than maybe I'd envisaged. And I think Brighton may be sort of culpable of thinking he's not going to take it on and score themselves, because they just back off him and back off him, and it just opens up for him. So great moment, I've got to say. Like, when that ball hit the net, I was feeling pretty good about life, because, 2 goals in 2 games for Nwaneri. I put him in my fantasy team that morning, and I was like, what have we got on our hands here? This is excellent.
There wasn't much more from Arsenal in terms of attacking threat in that first half. I think it was generally a pretty solid first half from us. Like, it wasn't one where you went in at halftime thinking, oh, we really, really need to improve in a big way here. I think it was generally solid. We kept Brighton more or less at arm's length. The only moment of danger I can really remember from that first half was when Jorginho got caught on the ball. I think it was a pass into him from Saliba. He tried to nick it past the Brighton player. I think it came to João Pedro, played into Adingra, who was off balance, kind of finished with his toe rather than...
that was a decent chance.
It was a very good chance. I think, realistically, they should have scored there. And that would have been 1-1, and that would have made us feel a lot different at half-time. But I was generally okay, if not massively enthused/excited, to go in 1-0 away from home against Brighton in the context, that we've already described with the starting lineup, the games we've played, etc., etc.
Yeah. This is a hard fixture, and to be leading at half-time with the issues we had was good. I should touch on, just before half-time, Nwaneri was booked, wasn't he? What was your reaction to that? There was a corner. It was a slightly odd situation where Gabriel went over to talk to him.
Yeah.
I think this is maybe where my sort of feelings about the referee were actually instigated, is that the referee sort of seemed to try and stop Gabriel from saying something to Ethan Nwaneri. And I was like, I don't think I've ever seen that. Like, that's allowed. That's definitely allowed.
Yeah.
And you see it all the time.
I thought it was... we have questions about time wasting, so I don't want to get into it too much now, but I thought it was a ridiculous booking, I have to say. The referee's standing there with his finger on his watch, like he's standing there going, I'll add this time on. That's what I took that gesture to mean. Not like, he wasn't tapping it like, come on, hurry up, hurry up. He was just like, I'll add that time on. And then Gabriel goes over to talk to him. Nwaneri takes a step back, puts his arm in the air to take the corner, and the referee books him. And I think we are all over the place with what is and what isn't a yellow card at the moment. Not just in Arsenal games, but in the Premier League in general. I think the fact that a player can get booked for something like that, and then Estupiñán can absolutely clatter into Declan Rice in the second half while he's in the air in a really dangerous way and not get a yellow card, makes an absurdity of that Nwaneri booking for me. I just cannot square that circle in any way. This focus on trivialities that can have a big impact on a player, can have a big impact on a performance or a team, as we've seen this season. I just can't get my head around it. And there'll be people saying, look, this is what's in our control. We can do things a bit more quickly. I accept that completely. But I do think there is something fundamentally ridiculous about Nwaneri getting booked for taking a few extra seconds that the referee could simply just add on at the end of the half, and a reckless, verging on dangerous tackle is not punished. I just can't. It makes my head hurt.
Well, I think with the time wasting, you make a good point that logically it's completely within the referee's power to even that out, right? He's got the stopwatch. If he wants to add that time on, he can, and justice will effectively be served. So the fact that they are coming down on these restarts, it's not actually about the time. It's about aesthetics, really. It's refereeing narrative, I think. And it's seeking, probably it's with a view to like the television product as well. It's like, we don't want these stoppages, but it is pretty infuriating. I thought it was a really harsh one on Nwaneri. And I'm not in the camp where, like, you know, I never see us do wrong. I think sometimes we do delay our restarts too long. I think we take the mickey sometimes. I think we play ourselves into trouble occasionally with that kind of thing. But I don't think this was one such instance. I really thought it was odd that he didn't let Gabriel have that conversation with Nwaneri. I just haven't really ever seen that before. Yeah. And there's a phrase I might use again on this podcast.
Yeah.
But and also Nwaneri, if he did take an extra second, shortly before that, he'd taken quite a bad corner. I don't know if you remember, but was it bad? I mean, it clipped the near post, didn't it? But it didn't get anywhere near to an Arsenal man.
No.
So a 17-year-old on his second Premier League start taking an extra beat before delivering his next corner kick, I think is something a referee should have been more understanding of. But the problem is Nwaneri is existing in a space where there is this narrative about Arsenal and set pieces and delays and gamesmanship and dark arts. So the yellow card goes to Ethan Nwaneri. But, you know, as I say, it's refereeing narrative.
Sure. No, I guess so. I think the other thing to say is that there is no rule on how long you have to take a corner or how long you have to take a throw-in. It's completely arbitrary, depending on...
Or a penalty kick. When's that going to happen?
Yeah.
That a guy's going to be... An Arsenal player, Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard's going to be stood waiting to spend a penalty kick, and as they take a deep breath, the referee strolls up and gives them a yellow card.
You know what? You're saying that now, and I can picture it so clearly in my mind. Absolutely. You know, that there is that side of it, that the arbitrary nature of what a referee deems to be too long is... Yeah.
Well, maybe there literally needs to be a rule.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean,
maybe it's like you've got 10 seconds or whatever it is.
Yeah, like the 6-second rule that goalkeepers can't have the ball in their hands for any more than 6 seconds, which of course we know is very, very strictly adhered to by all officials, right? Right?
Yeah.
Right?
I suppose you're opening up a can of worms with that, aren't you? But at least that would feel more... what can I say? Less random, you know? It would feel... more legitimate. I don't know. So I thought that was odd.
Yeah.
But there was more oddness to come, Andrew.
There was. Now, let's do it in this way. That free kick I mentioned, that we actually got a free kick for that Estupiñán challenge on Declan Rice, even if he didn't get a yellow card. And how he got through the entire game. Or did he get through? Did he get a yellow card at some point? No, he didn't.
He did. No. Did he not?
No. I'm just looking at the stuff here. He did not get a yellow card in the entire game, which is remarkable. I don't know. Remember, who was it a few years ago? I think they were playing for Watford. Left back used to play for Spurs. Danny Rose?
Yeah.
Was that it? Do you remember he had one game? I think it was at the Emirates, where he must have made about 8 fouls at least. And most of them were just going through the back of Bukayo Saka. And somehow he didn't get a yellow card in that game. And I think Estupiñán's performance or Teflon nature in this game reminded me of that. But we got this free kick. Quite an interesting take from Declan Rice, because he didn't put it in the air. I don't know if it was deliberate.
Oh, this was the low skidding ball.
This was the low skidding one, which I think, you know, it's a half chance. Maybe a little more for Mikel Merino, but it is difficult when the ball is coming through a sea of legs like that. You can't really see it until it's almost on top of you, and he stuck a foot out and stuck it wide. It's one of those where, you know, a split second before or after, and maybe that ball is in the back of the net and it's 2-0. And then a couple of moments later, there's a penalty for Brighton. So...
Yeah, I mean... By the way, I thought Rice's set-piece delivery, including this one, was really pretty good on the day. And in the second half, it did feel like if we were ever going to score, it was going to be via that. But yeah, they go up the other end. I have to say, I don't think in the build-up to our penalty, it's our best, most composed defending that we've ever seen.
No, that's true.
Even William Saliba himself, who... you know, is usually so sort of elegant in the way he deals with things, I think looked a bit out of sorts. And then there's the incident in the penalty area where João Pedro takes sort of quite a nice sort of touch, flicks it up, heads the ball on. And in real time, and I guess what the referee sees is William Saliba effectively going to head the ball, missing. I think crucially that is what the referee sees, to give him his dues. And that's what I saw in real time as well. And then making contact with João Pedro's head and João Pedro going down. I've never... I mean, we'll get into the rights and wrongs of it. I think this is an incredibly unusual incident.
Yes.
Because I don't think I've ever seen this exact scenario or one close to it play out before.
Me neither.
Because players don't often dribble with their heads, is one of the things. And then usually if two players are competing for a ball that's in the air and they make contact with their heads, usually they both go down.
Yes.
And if they both go down, there's nothing to see there.
No, other than the referee stops the game and gets
treatment
players on. I mean,
unfortunately, William Saliba's head is made of iron.
Or João Pedro is a fucking ham of the highest order.
I hadn't considered that. That's a fair point.
It is so weird because you see clashes of heads all the time. You see incidents in the penalty box where two players are going to head the ball and neither of them gets the ball and they come together. There is a clash of heads and you never see those given as penalties. You know, it is completely weird. I mean, I went through the ringer on this one in that at first I was like, how the fuck is that a penalty? And then I saw the replay that you've mentioned where it does look like Saliba, I'm not going to say loafs him, but it's in that vicinity, isn't it? Where it does look sort of like a headbutt. It's obviously not a headbutt, but what the referee is seeing is Saliba moving his head towards the ball. From what he can see, he doesn't get the ball and his head makes contact with João Pedro, who goes down and makes sure that the referee can see that he has been hit in the head, right? He's wriggling around like a little worm on the ground and everything.
And Saliba's intent in that situation doesn't matter, right? If a player goes for a tackle in the penalty box and they miss the ball, and obviously we will come back to this, and make contact with the man, that's a penalty. It doesn't matter that it was an innocent attempt to go for the ball. Yeah. If it's a trip, it's a foul. And I think you just don't often see people trip people with their heads. So, it was initially very strange. So I was with you where I was like, is that a penalty? And then I was like, well, I guess it could be. I've just never seen it before.
I was trying to apply my own rule to it, like what would I think if it happened up the other end?
Yeah.
And when I saw the replay, I was like, yeah, I think I want that penalty. You know? But then...
I think so. I think we'd be saying, he's headbutted him there.
Yeah, he's like fucking stuck the nut on him.
But there's a big but, Andrew.
There is a big but, and it's not either of us after our Christmas indulgences.
Wow. Speak for yourself.
William Saliba does make contact with the ball. Now, you have to look at this in a very forensic way, I guess. Slow motion replay. So what we have...
there was some sort of unit who were like supposed to do that.
Who
do you know what I mean?
Like have access to video replays?
Yeah, like if they could assist the referee
via
video.
No.
That would, in a situation like this, that would be brilliant, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, we're joking, but I think there's a serious point here, right? That
Twitter could referee this incident, or Blue Sky, or whatever social media platform you're on, better than the actual video assistant referee.
Well, I mean, there it is. There it is. From what we understand, VAR checked and cleared the decision really quickly.
Yes, the ruling was there was sufficient contact to support the referee's award of a penalty.
Right. But what they obviously didn't do was look at that in any detail. Because the reality of the situation is both players touch the ball. There is a clash of heads. One player goes down. As you say, if Saliba went down, the referee is not giving any kind of penalty. He's stopping the game. He's getting the physios on. Why can they take 5 minutes to see if somebody's offside or not? But they look at something like that in a
Sometimes, Andrew, sometimes they just don't draw the lines, though.
Yeah, let's not forget about that one, Jesus. But, you know, why can't they look at that on a more forensic level? Why did they just apply this very surface level view of this incident without looking to see, was there a touch from William Saliba? Is it incompetence? Is it laziness? Is it, I don't know what it is. It's wrong. They got it wrong because the whole situation changes when Saliba touches the ball.
Yeah, and listen, I didn't like the referee's demeanour in this game, as per that question and my comments on the video. I felt like he refereed with sort of palpable ego. And, there was a slight sense of sort of theatricality about him that I find grating, as there often is with this particular referee. That said, this is a VAR error.
100%.
You know, I can understand the referee's decision to award a penalty in that circumstance. But clearly what's happened is, because we know how these conversations go, and maybe we'll hear this conversation at some point in time, but he said to the VAR, João Pedro's headed the ball away, Saliba's come in and nutted him, and it's a foul. And they've taken a look at one replay and gone, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And clearly, I mean, there has to be a learning from this, which is just check the bloody reverse angle, like they do on every TV broadcast of a football match ever. Mm-hmm. It's just, and I will be very, very, very disappointed if this isn't acknowledged as an error, because let's be clear. To use the scenario again where we're saying, if you go in with like that with a foot, if Saliba gets a toe on the ball there, then that's not a penalty. Do you know what I mean? Like, how many times do you see a penalty awarded and then given back because it's like, oh look, he got a little bit of the ball. You know, that's rightly or wrongly, that is kind of the unofficial law in the penalty area, and I think rightly so, because it should be a high bar to award a penalty. It's so swingy. It weighs so heavy on the outcome of a game. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, for my frustrations with the referee, this is definitely an error of the video review. 100%.
I agree with that completely. Whatever you or I or anybody listening might think of Anthony Taylor, this is a problem of VAR's making, or that VAR didn't do their job properly. I look forward to ESPN's PGMOL propagandist making some kind of excuse for this decision a bit later on.
I'm thinking now, and I'm like, how will they excuse it? And I think the only way they could do it is if they could say somehow that Saliba was, reckless or out of control or something like that. But I just don't think that will stand up.
No, because that's not what it was.
No.
It was two players competing for a ball in the air. They both got the ball. There was an unfortunate collision, and that's all it is. Should not be a penalty.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, and look, it took me until after the game really to see that.
Me too. Yeah, like I said, I went through it. From going how, then oh god, I suppose it is, because I'd wanted, and then like, oh no way, So,
but I'm not sat in a room being paid to study that and analyse it, in close detail to make sure it's right. So yeah, I think that's a real. Yeah, it's extremely frustrating. But what's interesting is, like, I do feel that many fans are aggrieved about it. But equally, I've been sort of relatively impressed almost by how many fans have sort of been also at the same time been able to sit back and say, but I'm not sure we deserve to win the game. A draw may have been a fair result.
Well, I mean, it depends how you frame that, right?
Yeah.
Where I think you can, I don't think there's anybody out there who's going to say after the penalty incident, we did enough to go on and win the game. And actually, Brighton probably had the best chance at one point. They They got down the right-hand side. And Mitoma was just sort of on his heels a little bit, where you would expect him to slide in at the back post and make that 2-1. So I think you can say, yeah, we didn't deserve to win the game. But then another way of framing that discussion is like, do we have enough available to us or in the tank to really push on and try and win the game? Martin Odegaard came off the bench, and I think he should have stayed there because we've had a discussion about his recent form. So I don't want to do that again. I think, there's big room for improvement from Martin Odegaard at this moment in time, right? I think everybody would acknowledge that. But I also think, like, is he really committed? Is he doing the right thing? Is he being responsible by pushing himself and trying to help the team in a difficult moment as captain, feeling that responsibility? I get that. And I think on the one hand, you can applaud that. On the other, you might say you've got to be realistic about what you can do and what you can contribute if you are really ill. He wasn't in training on Friday because he was so sick. So there is a sort of, leave aside the player responsibility, captain responsibility. Maybe there is a discussion to be had about, your own just personal health, and maybe you'd be better off staying at home, as hard as it is to envisage that bench looking even weaker than it already did, because there were 2 academy kids, Martin Odegaard, and a plethora of left backs. And that was it, that was all we had. So there is that question about, how can we not realistically expect to get more from a game like this when we have so little on the bench? And that then opens up the discussion about our squad. And we've been unfortunate a little bit, obviously, with the Saka injury, Sterling injury at the same time. Havertz is sick. But you can't help but think we need more than what we have at this moment in time. And I know that's kind of easier said than done, but was that something you took away from that second half? That would you swap a left back for another attacking player? Maybe is the question.
In a heartbeat, Andrew.
Yeah, for sure.
And in fact, I'm looking at the left backs we've got in guys like Zinchenko and Lewis Skelly and thinking, is there a more attacking application for them to try and rebalance the squad a bit, to be honest with you?
Sure. Zinchenko in particular, because he has played quite a bit in midfield, and I know Arteta's been very reluctant to do that, but we're at a point where some of the options available to us, is Zinchenko in that context a potential attacking sub rather than a left back sub?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. And listen, Odegaard, I don't think was right at all.
No.
But I can understand Arteta's and Odegaard's own inclination to make himself available in the kind of crisis that Arsenal are in terms of availability in attacking parts of the pitch, and seniority, particularly. I mean, I just think you nailed it when you said, did we have enough in the tank? Did we have enough at our disposal? And the answer to that question was just no. Whether it was legs or quality, we just looked like a team that had slightly hit a bit of a wall in terms of what we could offer. And Brighton looked the likelier, frankly, in those final 20 minutes. They had the momentum of the equaliser as well, which always helps. But at the same time, we speak about deserve. What did Arsenal deserve? If you are to win a league, there's going to be half a dozen games where maybe it could have been a draw, but you nick it, and we weren't able to do that. And even Martinelli, by the way, I thought when he came on didn't look right.
Well, he'd been ill as well, so
exactly.
Which, by the way, we didn't mention. We talked about Nwaneri's goal, but the unfortunate consequence of that first half for him was an injury. There was part of me thought that because of the yellow card, Mikel Arteta was taking no chances.
Same. That's what I assumed.
Yeah. But it turns out it is a muscular injury, according to Arteta. He said, really bad news. is the way he framed it. Now, it might just be really bad news because it's one thing on top of another thing on top of another thing, rather than being specific about the extent of that injury.
Yes, but exactly. And the timing for Ethan as well is really bad news.
But I am a little bit worried that, it could be a...
Yeah,
so we don't know yet. So
listen, people were really disheartened after the game. That was my perception anyway. Mm-hmm. And there was as much frustration with kind of, the team themselves or the squad building or, that's led us to this position, almost as much frustration as there was with the referee. I'm in the cold light of day, I'm a little bit more relaxed about that result. I mean, maybe events at Anfield have played their part in that.
Yeah.
But I think 4 points from those 2 away games, I kind of think in any season, I'm talking about Brentford and Brighton here, is a pretty decent return. I know that the context makes that maybe less palatable, but given the restrictions that Mikel is operating under at the moment, it's not too bad, really. I really don't think. And listen, I know that, it might not be enough and we could do better. And, there are things in our performance I didn't love. But I'm finding it hard to give them too hard a time when I look at what they're up against at this point in time.
I don't think that's unreasonable. I think there was, as you say, palpable frustration because as well, I think there was, a little hope for some revenge against Brighton after what happened in that first game. Their managers.
It's a real case of the Fulhams, isn't it, from last season?
It is a bit. So I understand, and I completely understand the frustration of we need to do more in front of goal. We need more attacking threat. And I think that is the wider conversation, that the fine margins of the Premier League become a little less fine when you've got more firepower. Now, there are reasons why we didn't have enough firepower for this game, but we are in a situation where I think that is something we're going to have to address in January, one way or the other. We'll come to that, perhaps in part 2. But I think objectively, when you look at these 2 games, 4 points away to Brentford, who are very good this season, particularly at home, and away to Brighton, it's not terrible. It's just that what else has happened this season makes these results a lot more difficult to take. Is that, or to maybe try and find that silver lining a bit? So objectively, if you step back, it's not that bad. Subjectively, in the moment, in the context of the title race, it really, really felt like another couple of points dropped. I think you make a point, though, about what we expected to happen at Anfield yesterday. Because I think what I thought anyway was that Liverpool, in the form they're in, with the players they have against that Manchester United team, were going to take full advantage of Arsenal dropping points and extending the lead at the top even further. So there's a measure of frustration in the moment when we don't win that game against Brighton. I have to say, this morning I feel more relieved than frustrated after what happened at Anfield. So it gives you a slightly different perspective, when we're sitting down and talking about this. I think if we had recorded yesterday, we would have a very different podcast than the one we're having right now, because the expectation was that Liverpool were going to batter the shit out of Manchester United. It didn't happen.
I mean, also, if those games had been the other way round, if Liverpool had dropped those points and then Arsenal had failed to capitalise, I suspect that would be a really gloomy mood this morning. I mean, look, if your glass is half empty, you'll look at the weekend holistically and say, it's another weekend where Liverpool have dropped points and we haven't been able to close that gap.
Completely.
And that's completely valid and fair. But yeah, I don't know. Did you watch the game, Liverpool game?
Yes.
What did you make of it?
It was kind of mad.
It was. I only saw the last. I saw about from when United took the lead, so the last sort of 35, 40 minutes.
Right, yeah. I mean, it was very entertaining, I have to say.
Yeah, it was.
There were some moments in there, weren't there? That Darwin Núñez challenge on De Ligt I don't understand how that's not a red card.
Yeah, that was a strange one.
And they just gloss over it in commentary. Gary Neville said, "Ooh, that's not nice." Something like that. And they moved on and completely glossed over it. But when you look at it, it's Nunez just looks at De Ligt, has no intention of playing the ball, and shoulders him right in the chin. Like, how's that not violent conduct? You see, these are the things where we've had really bad luck throughout this season. And I think you have to acknowledge that we have had some extraordinarily bad luck or decisions that have gone against us, which have really impacted certain fixtures and maybe the subsequent fixtures because we've had to deal with suspensions, like Rice suspended for a game, Saliba suspended for the Liverpool game. You know, the impact that those red cards had on those fixtures themselves.
That was a good point. We had that debate last week about would you rather a signing or remove the red cards?
Yeah.
And people made the point, it's not just the red cards within the game, it's what they cost you in the suspensions the following game as well.
Yeah. So if you come around to the red cards.
No, I won't be shifting my position.
No, I won't. Fuck the evidence. I won't. I'm not having any of that.
I thought that was a great point and something I had, that slipped by me. But you make a good point about Darwin Núñez, and I'm sure people at home, when we were talking about the penalty, would have been screaming about Anthony Gordon. Was it Anthony Gordon in the Newcastle Spurs game?
Yeah, look, players know what they're doing with their bodies at all times. That is 100% a penalty. Like Kulusevski just leaves the shoulder on him. I know Spurs lost anyway, so it's fine. But, that's another incident where a player has inflicted violence upon another player, and it's just sort of like, it's accidental. Come on. You could see it.
Can I, again, I'll take another sip from my glass and say it's even less than half full now.
Okay.
Or it's decidedly half empty. Do you think there's any degree to which we're kind of placing really big emphasis on these kind of decisions or fine margin moments and saying, we've been unlucky because there have been too many games where we haven't done enough to win convincingly, to put ourselves in a position where those things don't hurt us? I
think the two things are connected.
Right.
Like the bad luck wouldn't feel as bad if we maybe were a little more threatening. Or maybe...
Yeah, I don't know, for example, because I only really study the Arsenal games and know them intimately well. But have there been decisions that have gone against Liverpool this season?
No.
That, you zero, yeah. No. But has there been like a 50-50 that didn't go in their favour, but they were 2-0 up at that point in time and it didn't matter? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I know what you mean. I don't know. I can't say. There's probably people out there listening who could say that. But going back to my point about Nunez is that it feels maybe Liverpool can ride their luck, but they seem to get quite a lot of good luck. And have had quite a lot of good luck so far this season. I'm not taking anything away from their performances, by the way. I think they've been very good. And obviously in Mo Salah, they have the best player in the world right now, which, like it or not, is a bit of a difference maker when you're trying to assess one team against another team, right? He is the best player in the world, doing extraordinary things with a consistency and a frequency that is both remarkable and really, really fucking annoying when you're trying to chase down a Liverpool team. So maybe that is the thing that offsets whatever little bits of bad luck Liverpool have is just having the best player in the world. I know we can do more, and I think that is where the analysis needs to be, is like, what can we do? What can we control? How can we build our squad? How can we cope better with injury? Are there ways we can set up the team, for example, when we don't have a creative midfielder? Are there other solutions? Maybe we just need more creative midfielders as well. That could be an aspect of how we build our squad, while the focus is on strikers and wingers and attackers and those kinds of things. So,
I hear that. It's interesting. Like, I think Newcastle and Arsenal over the last 5 games have identical Premier League records. It's like draw, win, 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 draw, or something like
Liverpool
that.
and Arsenal, or Newcastle and Arsenal?
Oh, sorry, Liverpool and Arsenal.
Yeah.
So it's draw, win, 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 draw. I mean, I look at Liverpool yesterday, and by the way, I thought United looked strikingly better than they have done of late, which is really bad timing with the FA Cup game next weekend. Hopefully that was just a blip, a positive blip.
Yeah, a positive blip.
An outlier. I look at Liverpool and I totally understand everybody saying, well, they don't look wholly convincing. This isn't Man City. They don't necessarily look like a 90-point team. I think all those points have validity. I just look at us and I think, I'm not sure it's true of us either. You know what I mean? I don't look at our team and think, but we do look like a 90-point team. I don't necessarily see that. I think something has to change.
For sure.
And obviously, the January transfer market is maybe the biggest opportunity for change in a season.
Do you think, I don't know if we have a question about the January transfer market.
I suspect we have.
Yeah? Will we try and find one and save it then for part 2?
Yeah. Let's do that. Because it's a big topic, isn't it?
It is. All right. Well, look, let's take a little break here. We'll be back with your questions and more in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer the questions that you sent to us on Blue Sky at gunnerblog.bsky.social and at arseblog.com. Those are the handles on Blue Sky. Also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. And it's from there that the question that's going to kick off our discussion about the transfer window and Arsenal's need to do something or otherwise, it comes from there. It comes from Gunnar Munner. He says, good morning, gentlemen. In what turns out to be a complete surprise, Arsenal have a drought of forward talent. Do we try and rectify this now in the winter window, or just accept that the league is done and go get the desired targets in the summer when they are more gettable? So it gives us a different kind of way to come at this.
Yeah. I have to say that after the Brighton game, I was looking at it and thinking, not necessarily what I think, but I was wondering if the club might feel like, I think in general their approach is we'd rather get the right people than get just somebody in. Mm-hmm. I think that's generally how they see it. And after the Brighton game, I was sort of expecting Liverpool to win, and at that point, I think it would have been 9 points with a game in hand. And I just think, I think they would have maybe had some reservations there. Like, I always think of when, we were ahead of Man City and they went out and bought Kivior and Jorginho and Trossard. And I think that was because we were so in the thick of the race that they felt they had to do everything to help Arsenal get over the line. Mm-hmm. And I think at that point, with that degree of gap, I think it would be quite difficult to argue that we were in much of a race. And I did wonder if that might impact their strategic decision. I think that in terms of the absentees now, and we're waiting for news on Nwaneri, I called it a crisis in part 1. And I sort of think it is at this point in time. I think losing Bukayo Saka alone could constitute a crisis. But when you add in the other players we've lost in attacking areas and the fact that we were probably lacking in that part of the pitch before the transfer window and before the injuries, I think there is a huge onus on them to do something. What that is, I have to be honest and say I do not know. Like, I don't know what's feasible in January, but we look incredibly short. And if the January window typically is one that's about being reactive to the needs of the squad, if this doesn't provoke a reaction, then it's difficult to say what will. Yeah,
we had this little conversation on WhatsApp, didn't we? And you mentioned that, if the league is gone, they might feel more inclined to do something in the summer. But, we are in, as it stands, this could be quite different next week, but who knows? As it stands, we're in 2 cup competitions.
Yeah.
We're also in the Champions League, and that's not nothing. That is also worth committing resources to. Because, we could finish second in the league. If you win the Champions League, though, that's a fucking great season. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. But I think you have to give yourself the best opportunity to win every competition that you're in, not just the league. Obviously, the 38 games sort of dominates your season and dominates your thinking and dominates your planning, but there are other competitions. And this is a team, I think, that needs some success. It needs silverware. We've had this debate and discussion as well before. Sometimes you need to win something before you can go on and win everything that you want to win, just to give you that belief. And I think it would be, on top of all the other reasons that you've just outlined about, where we are, who we've got available, what the players we have available are capable of as well, is an aspect of this. I think we would be doing this team and this squad and this, I'm not going to say the manager necessarily, but I think the project, exactly, we would be doing it a disservice if we did not really push the boat out to try and make at least one signing during the January window. Like we have, here was a question that stood out to me a bit. Let me just see if I can find it. Gibbsinho. He said, I did have a question, something about getting an attacker in the transfer market or about players who are too fatigued. But fuck it all. Football has been a bore lately. Hoping for a better next few months. And there are a couple of questions about that, about whether or not we're enjoying the season. Are we enjoying watching this team? And I do think there is something to be mindful of there.
Yes. Can I throw a question on top of that?
Yeah.
The Robinator, who said, morning, gents. What I can't seem to put my finger on is why our football has become so boring. Is it predictability? Is it slower pace? Is it the opposition playing in low blocks? Personnel, perhaps? I can't help but notice other teams play more fluid and forward, but I'm struggling to pinpoint what the issue is.
I think it's a cocktail of things. I don't think it's any one thing. I do think it's contributing.
I think you described it as like the feel bad factor around the season. I think that that's a sort of a not particularly loudly voiced part of it, is that we haven't consistently been very entertaining to watch.
That's true. And I think there are myriad reasons for that. I'm not saying it's all about the manager and all about his tactics and all about his maybe proclivity to be more defensively solid than attackingly, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say there?
Yeah, sure.
Cavalier, yeah. I don't think that's ever going to be a word you use too often with regards.
No, he's a roundhead.
Yeah.
In British Civil War terms.
But, there have been circumstances and contexts and things that have happened in games which have had an impact, from the red cards. And again, I'm just trying to explore why rather than sound like I'm making excuses, but I think those have played a part. I think injuries have played a part. I think fitness, has played a part. I think the lack of real attacking depth has played a part. I do feel like we are maybe an attacking midfielder light as well. Like our answer to being a bit more attacking in midfield is to drop Kai Havertz in there.
Yeah.
That's our only other...
I think we're light in three positions, Andrew. I really do. I think attacking midfield, wide and centre forward, you could make a really good case for an addition. Listen, don't expect that to happen in January, of course not. But I think you could make a case that we're missing a player in each of those positions.
Yes, and those players allow you to maybe be, in as much as Mikel Arteta might let you, be a bit more cavalier, be a bit more attacking, take a few more chances, take a few more risks, or play the game in a slightly different way at times when you are facing a low block where it's really, really hard to break down. I'm not saying that this is the most sophisticated way of thinking about football, but sometimes you just kind of need to blunderbuss the ball into the back of the net. You know what I mean? You just need to sometimes get it in the mixer towards the big man or big men. And that's not what I'm not saying that is the ideal solution, but I feel like we are a little, we sort of have one plan without too much in the way of alternatives. That's all.
Well, and we've lost our most exciting player.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is the reality right now. I heard Elliot, I think on Arsenal Vision, maybe it's after the Brighton game, saying, I don't think as a fan base we've sort of fully reckoned with quite how big a blow it is to lose Saka for this period of time. And I think there may be some truth in that. I don't think I myself, let's say that, have kind of fully acknowledged quite how disastrous that is. And I think it's because, you know, you want to be optimistic. You want to, you know, you want to think we're in it. You want to think it's all to play for. But it's huge. As I said, it could be a crisis in itself.
Yeah.
You know, it's not quite Liverpool losing Salah, but it's probably as close as we get to that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, speak for yourself, though, by the way. I've been in mourning ever since. I've been wearing black.
Sure, yeah.
Self-flagellating, you know, around the house.
Well, quite right, too. But yeah, I do think that's a huge component in this. On the sort of boring thing, it's a bit of a dirty word, isn't it, to use about your own team? Like, and it's probably unfair, I think, given some of the mitigation you've listed. But I do think there are stylistic things at play. I often think, do you remember that Liverpool played West Ham a few weeks ago and they battered them 5-0? We also battered West Ham, by the way. Mm-hmm. I think that may say more about West Ham than anything else. But I remember their first goal was scored by Luis Diaz. And he goes to play a through ball and he gets cut out, comes straight back to him. And he puts it in the bottom corner. And I remember I was following on social media as well at the time. And I read so many people saying, so lucky. You know, they got so lucky there, Liverpool. But I never really agreed with that, because what Diaz does in the build-up to that goal is receive a ball in like a central area, spin on it on the half turn, get away from a man and try to play a ball directly forwards into the penalty area. Mm-hmm. And yes, it gets cut out. And yes, it comes back to him. But there was a kind of a raw directness about what he was doing that really, to me, is a case of making your own luck. And I do feel that it's such a small thing, but it kind of crystallized something that I feel that we lack, that kind of individual bravado to be like, I'm going to drive at the goal. Yeah. You know, Nwaneri actually did it in the Brighton game quite effectively. But this is a different situation with men around the box where it's like, yeah, there's 4 men on the edge of the penalty area, but I'm going to turn, I'm going to dribble towards the goal. I'm going to try and play a pass in a central area into the penalty area and see what happens. And you know, I do think that we are sometimes too structured for that kind of thing.
Sure.
And again, how can you remedy that? Well, maybe some of the manager has some control, but also the transfer market, I would say.
Let me follow on from that then. Because we had a couple of questions. One on the Discord from Jedward Jizzerhands. I like that. He said, if Barcelona, the feckin' Egypts that they are, can't re-register Dani Olmo and he is available on a free transfer this month, would you like Arsenal to pursue that? He wouldn't necessarily be the attacking signing we're all clamouring for, but it seems like too good an opportunity to pass up, even accounting for his presumably massive wages. And on Blue Sky, Bobbert, who's at bobbertonbluesky.bsky.social, says, how realistic is Dani Olmo to Arsenal? Because although he's not exactly a winger, where we're lightest at the moment, he's definitely a creative impact player. On a free seems like a no-brainer market opportunity. Or maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe both, Bobbert. Who knows?
I mean, it's a mad case, right? And we all know Barcelona, case of a club. He's played most of his football as a number 10 this season. You know, that is an area where we could do with an addition, as we've just said. He's in this bizarre situation where they can't register him because they haven't done enough for the Spanish football authorities in terms of sort of the financial aspects to it for them. I think they gave him special dispensation, effectively, to be registered for the first half of the season on the condition that Barcelona met certain financial parameters in terms of their wage bill. They've not met those, and therefore that permission for him to be registered has been withdrawn. So he's now looking at 6 months at least out of the Barcelona squad. Now,
unless they find a solution.
Unless they find a solution.
More
now,
levers.
Apparently as well, I don't know this as fact, but I have read that he has a clause in his contract in such a situation, which means he can walk away. Now, from what I do understand, at the moment, that's not what he wants to do. You know, he wanted to go to Barcelona. He wants to stay at Barcelona. Mm-hmm. There is talk of like quite a complex solution, which would involve him, you know, potentially joining somewhere on a 6-month deal and then rejoining Barcelona. Apparently, it won't be a cheap package, whatever happens, because his salary is significant and his agent, I think, is looking for another significant payday in order to facilitate a possible January move.
Right.
I think the main issue here is that he's not really agitating for it. I think, you know, he's happy in Spain, settled in Spain. If he has to miss the games, I think he's prepared to live with it right now. Mm-hmm. But it's exactly the sort of situation, you know, when you talk about January and you're like, what's possible? And you're looking for opportunities. I can totally understand why we've had a dozen people asking us this question today.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's from Catalonia as well, isn't he?
Right,
he's from Terrassa, which is not far outside of Barcelona. So I think it would be a wrench for him to leave. Like, I'm assuming he was at least Barcelona adjacent as a kid. So it would be a real wrench for him to leave. Over
basically admin.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, I feel like, I don't know what exactly is going to happen. I haven't read as much maybe as you on this, but I feel like Barcelona will drag this out as long as they possibly can in order to find some kind of solution. They'll sell what's left of their soul, if they haven't sold it all already, to Beelzebub himself, I think, in order to make this work. And I think the delay on that, like if you're humming and hawing about Dani Olmo and it drags on for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you're getting towards the end of January anyway, and then nothing happens. And I think it's too complicated to go near unless there is an absolutely definitive ruling where it's like, he can't do it. Then maybe it's something you consider.
Yeah. I don't see this one happening. Just on the sort of type of player, like I think most of us are sort of realistic about how much might get done in January. If I told you we could sign a player of one type or in one position, what would you be looking at?
Like there's a nagging part of me that is thinking like the left 8 that would be more Odegaard than Merino, if that makes sense. But being realistic, I don't think that's the player Mikel Arteta wants at this moment in time. Maybe he'll change in the future, I don't know. But it strikes me that when you go from Granit Xhaka to Kai Havertz to Mikel Merino in that position, whilst using Declan Rice in that position a lot, that he has a very specific profile in his own mind about what he wants, right? So I think you can draw, they're different players, more or less, but I think you can draw a sort of through line between all of them in terms of their profile, right? Physical, 3 out of 4 are left-footed, tall, good in the air. That's kind of what he wants in that position. So on that basis, I think we've got a better chance of finding a really good wide player than attracting a top centre forward in January. And that is where I think realistically I would be looking for Arsenal to do business, is to find a winger who can play on both sides, who can maybe sometimes play through the middle if you need him to. I think that's the most realistic arrival. What about you?
Yeah, I think so. And I have to say, I think I would really be looking for someone who is comfortable playing on that right-hand side. I know Nwaneri's done brilliantly in the last 2 games, but A, he's just got injured, and B, he's 17. And it's just, you know, I don't think it's fair really to expect him to maintain this level of performance between now and May. I'm not wholly convinced by Gabriel Martinelli on that side. I think he looks much better on the left. I don't quite see Trossard working there. Jesus maybe, but I think we need him at a centre forward at this point in time. So, if I could find someone who, I mean, ideally could be versatile and play through the middle or play on the left as well, but who really was comfortable on that right flank, I think that's what I would be aiming for. But picking out who that's going to be.
Yeah, we went through names in previous episodes, so I don't think we need to do that again. That's down to the club to find that player. Hopefully they can do that in the January window. I mean, you mentioned him there. We had a question on Blue Sky from Henry Mouland, who's at hmouland.bsky.social. He says, morning guys, do you have any thoughts on Trossard's form this season? His Premier League minutes per goal has more than doubled, 137 minutes per goal last season to 340 minutes per goal this season. His shooting success has nearly halved, 20% down to 12%. Against Brighton, he looked again quite blunt, and most of our threat came down the opposite wing. So, yeah, your thoughts on that? And, does that, I'm pretty sure it does, play into the desire for, for something else in the attacking third?
I think so. And I like Trossard as a player. I think more than most. I think he's, I don't think he's been at his best in the last few months, but I think he's part of an attack that's, not always clicked, not always been firing. In the games where we have, he's invariably been involved or, got himself on the score sheet here and there. It is a big drop-off in the second half of last season, but I'm not sure that was sustainable, to be honest, to be scoring at that level. And sometimes if I have a criticism of Arsenal, it does sometimes feel like strategically their glass is a bit half full. Like when a player has a fantastic period, I sometimes feel like there's an expectation it will continue. Whereas actually, I think there was a really strong case to look at the wide areas and think Arsenal needed more in the last summer window, even though Trossard had a really good 6 months. I sometimes feel like we plan for best case scenarios a bit with our players. And yes, he has had a dip. And that is a factor. I also think longer term with Trossard, I think there's still a decision, forthcoming on his future. He's at a point, coming to a point where the club will have to decide if they want to give him a new contract, if they're prepared to meet his demands. He's 30 now. Will they be prepared to give him a long-term deal? Will they be prepared to give him the salary that he wants? Wouldn't surprise me if in the summer, there's a bit of uncertainty around Trossard. We saw a bid come in from Saudi for him last summer. I think he'll have offers, and I think Arsenal will have to choose. Are they going to commit to him for another 3-4 years, or are they going to? Yeah, I don't think sell him on?
I don't think we should.
No.
I think he's been a good signing, a successful signing, who's contributed a lot, but he always felt like a kind of, not temporary, but a bit of a sticking plaster solution. Because what we were going for was Mykhailo Mudryk, who would have been a young player who would have been there, if it had worked out, with him for years to come. Whereas we needed somebody, Trossard's a good guy, to come in, make a contribution, score goals and assists. I think he's a smart player, but his form right now is, it's a bit of a worry, I have to say. And then if you do get to the summer, he's got a contract till 2026. I don't think you really should be renewing 30, 31-year-old players unless they're producing and have a track record of producing extraordinary things. So you could be a bit more confident if you had Mo Salah, who Liverpool have chosen not to renew.
Yeah,
in part because of his age.
I agree. And look, he's been a really good signing, like a really good piece of business, and a January signing. so it shows you what can be achieved. But if I was sort of sat in Edu's office, Jason Ato's office as it is now, looking at that whiteboard, I'd have written his name quite lightly in terms of my sort of 5-year plan moving forward.
He's not in green, maybe not in red yet, but sort of in a
maybe
kind
in
of
orange or something.
A bit of maroon.
Yeah. But yeah, listen, I mean, if he could turn a bit of a corner and start producing for us again,
it'd be very fucking useful. Yeah, it'd be very useful at this moment in time. Here's a question. We did touch on it in the first half. It comes from Raffiano82 on the Discord. It says, do you think there's anything we can do now to arrest the consistent bookings we're getting for time wasting? I find myself waiting for the yellow card at every set piece we have now and get frustrated myself at how long we're taking. I don't...
Yeah. Do you feel that at all? Like when it's a throw-in or a corner, do you have that anxiety of like, oh, come on, lads?
Yeah, kind of now. Kind of, because it's happened more than once. I did like this follow-up, by the way, from Blue Sky, from Careful Brewer on Blue Sky. Said, while watching the Fulham game yesterday, I kept hearing a couple of kids shouting, throw the ball, every time Ipswich had a throw-in. Do we need to hire these children to motivate our players to get on with it?
It's not a bad shout.
Yeah.
The window is open.
I have to say, I'm not as frustrated by, in inverted commas, time wasting as some people might be. Like, I don't think it's deliberate time wasting in the way that it has been presented. I think we're taking our time for sure, but I think we're also just trying to keep possession, particularly from throw-ins, which can be difficult to do that, But I think the fact that we've had so many yellow cards at this moment in time tells you that at least among the officials or among PGMOL, there is a sense that that's what we're doing, and they are cracking down on it, on us, more than any other team, because, I see other teams take their time over throw-ins and corners as well, but don't get punished anywhere near as much. I think what it is now is we have to be really mindful of it. We have to be, because the referees are looking for it now, and I think the opposition crowds are looking for it now, and I think we have to quieten it down. And what we can do, obviously, is just be a bit quicker in those situations, whether that's to do with how quickly we take it or how quickly the players on the pitch get set into their positions when we have a throw-in, etc., etc. I think there probably is a need to do things a little more rapidly.
We've slightly touched on this before, but what do you think is actually happening in those moments? Like, why do you think there are these delays by Arsenal? Is it time wasting?
Do you think it's like, I don't know, I'm going to answer your question with a question, but do you think it is an instruction from Mikel Arteta or his coaching staff, whether we've got a throw-in coach or a set-piece coach or whatever it is, do you think it is a specific instruction to take as long as possible over every single throw-in? Because we heard earlier in the season that Arteta was very, very keen on quick restarts and catching the opposition maybe not quite set themselves. And this seems counterintuitive in that sense.
True. And yet it does, I have to be honest and say it does often look quite deliberate, particularly with the corner kicks, for example. So I really don't know. My assumption with the corners and free kicks is that it's a kind of, that it's about the player centering themselves before the delivery. A bit like, I always remember Johnny Wilkinson taking conversions for England, right, in the rugby, and he had that sort of trademark, or the Cristiano Ronaldo kind of trademark puff of the cheeks, to invoke a football comparison. Like, I wouldn't surprise me if there's some sort of performance psychology at play here, where it's like, don't be rushed, take your time, focus on your technique, and maybe there's an extent to which, again, with the corner deliveries, it's getting really good results. So Arsenal are like, we're prepared to take a booking every other game.
Sure, yeah.
The throw-ins, it's a bit more difficult to explain. And it does feel sometimes like the players are more visibly looking for a solution. Throw-ins are really difficult. I think that's something that's not spoken about enough in football. Retaining possession at a throw-in is really quite hard. Maybe harder than like any other dead ball scenario, because you're over on the side of the pitch. The entire team can squeeze over to that side. Like, what's the classic throw-in? The classic throw-in is you chuck it to a bloke and he gives it straight back to you. And where are you then? Pinned to the sideline with the opposition all able to press you on that flank. What do you do? Knock it down the line? Give it away?
That's it. Like, or throw it long down the line and hope
for the best. Hope to make some ground. I think throw-ins are hard.
Do you think it's a coincidence, let's say, that the throw-in issue or the perceived slowness of our throw-ins appears to be a right side issue rather than a left side issue? Because I don't get the sense that when one of our 50 left backs takes a throw-in, it's quite the same as when Ben White or Jurrien Timber takes a throw-in. Those two in particular, maybe it's a case they're just waiting for the right moment, waiting for somebody to make the move. Is the onus not necessarily on the thrower themselves, but on the teammates to try and find a little bit of space? But that requires a bit of moving around, a bit of sidestepping here or there, but it does seem more right-sided than left-sided.
Maybe if you think about it, it's usually in sort of the left side of central midfield for us, Declan Rice or Mikel Merino. There may be more obvious targets as well in some respects. Guys who you could think, I'll chuck them the ball and they'll be fine with their back to goal, which you might not think that of Martin Odegaard. I know his technique's immaculate, but physically he's not 6'3", is he? I don't know. It's so I would say I have more sort of frustration and concern over the throw-ins, even though I appreciate if you're a coach who's fixated with control and retaining possession being absolutely key to that control, a throw-in is a bit of a pain, to be honest with you.
There's too much chaos, too much randomness from a throw-in.
Yeah, exactly. And like I say, they're just very difficult. But it's something to keep an eye on. I think we're at the point, a bit like we were a couple of games into the season when we lost players for delay and restarts and they were sent off. We're at a point where we almost have to correct ourselves just to control the narrative a little bit and try and, just take ourselves off referees' radar, if at all possible, for a period of time on this.
Yeah.
By the way, we did have a question from James Crossfield who said, "Morning, gents. I hope you get this. I'm new to Blue Sky. Only signed up to message the show. Well, congratulations and welcome. Could you give us an update on your points predictions you did in early December?" And we have now reached the end of our points prediction run.
Right.
So you had predicted a win at Brighton. I had predicted a draw.
So you got that right.
You are still the overall winner with your more optimistic outlook. Predicted from the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games. 9,
definitely 9. No, 9 by 3 is 27. 27
you predicted 23 points.
Okay. And we got what?
21, I believe.
Okay.
And I predicted 18. So, you know me, such a pessimist.
Yes. Mr. Miserable. That's what they call you.
Scrooge, they called me over Christmas time.
Scrooge McNicholas.
Scrooge McPoints. He doesn't give out any points to anybody. So 21, sort of, if we were being generous, we'd say it's between our guesses, but it is definitely closer to you. And not a bad return. Not a bad return.
No.
Maybe not enough to really turn up the heat at the top of the table.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of
other
competitions and the league table, Alex Muster said, "Do you agree that our next 2 fixtures are massive, even if they are not Premier League games? I think we need momentum and a good result versus Newcastle and a win over United in the FA Cup. After that, we have 2 big games at home, while Liverpool have difficult away games." And that is true, but setting aside the league for now, How big are these cup games in this next few days?
I think they're really big. I really do. I think they're very, very important. As I said at the start of this half, when we think about what this team can do this season, I think we have to look at the cup competitions and take them very seriously. So they are big games, and they're difficult games as well. Newcastle tomorrow night, and obviously Manchester United on Sunday. We had a question actually on the Discord from Shatner's Bassoon. He says, you have to play a severely weakened team in one of our next 3 matches. Which do you choose? I feel like you could make a case for each. And I think this is a really interesting discussion about, you know, what way do we approach these games? What way do we approach the Newcastle game tomorrow night, for example? What way do we approach the Manchester United game? And I think the idea of playing a weakened team is just absurd. I don't even think we have the players available to us to really do what some people might like, which is rotate really heavily for the cup games and keep ourselves fresh. I think we just have to pick the best possible team we can for tomorrow night based on injury, illness, availability, all of those things, and then see where everybody is afterwards, and then think about what we can do for Manchester United, you know?
I completely agree, game by game.
Yeah.
You know, we get Jurrien Timber back tomorrow night, so that's one change we can make. You know, maybe we'll rotate the left back, seeing as we've got so many. Mm-hmm. But other than that, it's kind of who's fit and available, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think they are important. I do think they are. When you get to the semi-final stage of any cup competition, I mean, you can put in all the caveats you want about the Carabao Cup and where it lies in the list of priorities. You know, I don't think that's even up for debate. But when you get to this point of a competition, you should be absolutely 100% out to try and win it. And you have to take it as seriously as you possibly can. So
yeah, and Newcastle's form has really picked up. I know they were a bit fortunate at the weekend, but the results are really good. They've lifted themselves from mid-table.
Yeah,
are they in the top 4? If not, they're close to it.
Close to it, yeah.
Yeah, they're 5th right now, 1 point behind Chelsea. So Chelsea, who haven't won for 4 games, by the way, let's all enjoy that.
Yeah.
I think it's a tough tie, a 2-legged tie against them, and United as well, who looked a lot better at Anfield. I wonder as well if, as a club and as a fan base, because of events of the last few years, we're kind of very fixated on Premier League performance as kind of the barometer of our season. Like the last 2 seasons prior to this have been absolutely all about the league, right?
Yeah.
To the extent that in some ways, you know, when we've gone out of cup competitions, people have kind of shrugged their shoulders about it, you know, or been like, well, you know, focus on the league. Mm-hmm. And I think this season is obviously going to have a different complexion and should have a different complexion. I mean, as you point out, there are 3 other competitions that, you know, we will be among the favourites for. And a semi-final in any competition is not to be sniffed at.
No.
So when you're this close, and I really think Arteta will see it that way as well. You know, I'm not expecting to see Josh Nichols at right back.
No. I think he'll take it very seriously. He really will. Right, what about doing a couple of little quick ones to finish us off? I thought this was quite interesting from Chifinho on the Discord. He said, would you consider a permanent move for Neto to open up a loan spot?
Yeah, I think I would actually. How old is Neto?
30 something.
Would I? Hang on, let me think about this. He is 30. I'm on Pedro Neto's Wikipedia.
He's 35.
35, 36 in the summer. Would I? Well, how long a contract have I got to give him?
You only have to give him a year if you want. A year plus 1, maybe, something like that. You've got an experienced backup goalkeeper.
I mean, he's literally not kicked a ball or caught a ball, has he, for Arsenal this season?
He can't play in the EFL Cup because
he's cup tied.
I don't think he would be playing anyway at this point.
I don't think he'll play the United game. Do you?
I'd be very surprised.
So the only issue with doing that is obviously he's not. in a dream world, if you want that experienced, and I imagine he'd be your third choice probably next season, you do want them to be homegrown because you're taking up a non-homegrown spot there. But if it meant, I suppose it all depends on what it enabled us to do.
That's
if
it.
Meant loaning a decent Premier League player in January, then sure, you do what you need to do. I can't imagine that Bournemouth are going to demand a big fee for him.
Probably not, but maybe we would offer them a $5 like we did for that Wolves guy. When they only wanted £1 million.
What's he up to? Dan Bentley, by the way. I bet that's who we sign in January.
Dan Bentley, because he can play a left back as well.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah. That's an interesting idea. Hadn't considered it.
Yeah.
Quick one here. Is it a quick one? We'll see. Martinelli the Elephant said, "Morning, gents. Is Declan Rice's versatility in midfield proving a hindrance to us getting the best out of him long term?"
Is it a hindrance? Does it complicate things? I don't know if that's quite the right word. I sort of expected Declan Rice to be pretty much in situ as the deep-lying midfielder at Arsenal by now.
Yeah.
But obviously he has been needed elsewhere. And I think Thomas Partey's form this season in that position has allowed Mikel Arteta to use Rice further forward. I do think at the start of the season that Rice, Marino, Odegaard was his plan, given how strongly he went after Marino. So is it a hindrance? I don't think it's a hindrance. I think it's probably a help at this moment in time, but longer term, would it benefit him and us if there was one position? I think probably yes.
Arteta was asked about this, about the versatility the other day, and he was quite insistent, wasn't he? He was quite like, he sort of said he needs to be versatile, with the ability he has, he can solve so many problems for us. And he does do that regularly, but I do think as he moves into sort of the next phase of his career, he might be looking for a more consistent role. But it's an interesting one. I think you're right. The Partey availability and form, I don't think was necessarily planned on.
No, they weren't banking on that. That's for sure.
No,
based on
it's been a positive
injury
surprise.
What about this one to finish us off? Calafury on the Discord. He's furious. He says, in the last 2 away games, we've heard opposition fans adopt the orcish nature of yesteryear Stoke and sing specific anti-Arsenal chants. I'm embarrassed to admit how much it winds me up. Do you feel the same? What are your least favourite anti-Arsenal chants?
Least favourite? I don't know, what's out there?
Well, the same old Arsenal always cheating. I find that quite, it's a bit pathetic. But, we've got a player down, his leg is off, his head is barely on his shoulders, there's blood spewing from his mouth after a terrible tackle, and they're singing same old Arsenal, always cheating. It's like, come on.
I also feel like, isn't every 2-syllable club getting that at some point in time? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, same old Chelsea always cheating.
Do they get that?
Oh, yeah, big time.
Well, they always are cheating, in fairness. I mean, their existence.
To be fair, they are always cheating. That's just a classic kind of smaller club against big club. I don't think that's unique to Arsenal. I think you'll hear that all up and down the Premier League. What other ones? Boring Arsenal.
I like that one.
Yeah. I've liked it more previously than maybe I have this
maybe
season.
Not this season as much.
There's a little gnawing element of truth there that I don't.
I tell you one I don't like. I don't like the same old Arsenal, always taking really too much time on their throw-ins on the right-hand side and
they
time
need
wasting
to work on the scansion of that
from an early point in the game. Don't like that one.
That's really caught light this season.
It really has. Top of the pops.
I think Brighton went for you're going to win fuck all. I think at one point I heard.
Right.
So we got to do the job against Newcastle, if only to prove them wrong.
That's the only reason to win.
Exactly. When we lift the trophy,
to shut those Brighton fans.
Mikel will say, "This is for the Brighton fans."
Yeah. Nice kickabout with the Brighton fans, something like that. All right, okay. Well, look, we will talk a little bit more about the Newcastle game later on this afternoon. Mikel Arteta has a press conference at 3:30 or thereabouts, I think. So we'll find out, hopefully, a bit more about Ethan Nwaneri, but we will look ahead to that over on Patreon. You can join us for a preview podcast at patreon.com/Arseblog. For now, thank you so much, as always, for being with us. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.